crime in the last 5 years, and almost 40% of those surveyed wouldn't report crimes to the police. It's part of a 2-year study by the universities of Leicester and Strathclyde, looking specifically at internet sex work, considering working conditions, safety and policing. Well, amongst its findings, it revealed most sex workers earn under £20,000 a year, with women typically earning more than men. In a moment, we'll talk to a spokesperson for the English collective of prostitutes and a sex worker. But first, Lee Milner reports on the realities of Britain's online sex industry.
In an anonymous industrial unit in Basildon, there is what could be described as an internet sex factory. Hidden in plain sight, this is the world of online sex work. Strictly, models specialise in what's known as webcamming. It's mostly women performing in front of paying customers on the internet in real time.
The models don't actually take their clothes off, which is, I think for most people, they'll think, what, sex work? Don't take your clothes off. But you'd find that there's a lot of lonely people out there who just want someone to talk to.
The company provides webcamming support services such as training, equipment and studios. The live video streams are routed through other web platforms. Models can also be paid daily, and the customers, known as members, will chat either using the keyboard or microphone.
What sort of people do you get in terms of age?
It ranges, you know, obviously the youngest being 18 because that's the minimum age. But we have some models that are 70. It really ranges. Teachers, lawyers, cleaners, chefs, sales assistants.
I'm really surprised, to be honest, by this place. Just sitting on this bed, it's not what I expected. It's a lot smaller, a little bit cosier than I imagined, and it must be very difficult for the models to really get into character. There's no real sexual atmosphere here.
A report in 2016 by the Home Affairs Committee estimated that there are between 60 and 80,000 sex workers in the UK. Contacts are now much more likely to be made online. Now, a 2-year study called Beyond the Gaze by Leicester and Strathclyde universities attempts to better understand the lives of the people operating in this area and improve their safety.
11 years ago, 5 young women were picked up off these streets in Ipswich and murdered by the serial killer Steve Wright. But street prostitution now only accounts for a small fraction of the UK market, just 3%. And while the new study confirms that levels of violence against internet-based sex workers are considerably lower, new risks have emerged.
We were told about persistent emailing, persistent phone calls, people turning up at the door of people's homes, and some of these have gone on for 6, 7, 8 years. One of the key issues here is that sex workers are often very reluctant to report to the police. They fear that either nothing will be done about the issues or they fear that they will have reprisals.
Charlotte Rose is one of the UK's most high-profile sex work activists and an escort.
I'm stigmatised, marginalised, penalised all the time. I've been threatened, I've been blackmailed, I've been evicted twice because of what I do for a living, because of somebody else's moral opinion. The fact is that you wake up in the morning, you go to work 9 to 5, go home and see your family. That's exactly what I do every day. This is just a business for me.
In my view, prostitution is a phenomenon in which we're not just dealing with sex, we're dealing with power. And any society that chooses to turn a blind eye to the vast majority of prostitution, which is highly coercive, highly exploitative, is one in which I think we're not going to tackle many of the challenges we face.
Advertising sexual services online isn't illegal in the UK, and by far the biggest marketplace is the website Adult Work. It's a portal for webcamming and other paid sexual services. The report authors say the policing response to the growth of the online sex market remains inconsistent and underdeveloped. The focus, they say, is on trafficking and street work.
The proliferation of the internet has been a game changer for us. There's so much variation in what's happening with sex work. I would say that the level of knowledge that we've got at the moment is incomplete, and we are commissioning further research to properly understand the extent and prevalence of sex working across the UK at this moment.
Well, let's talk now to Niki Adams from the English collective of Prostitutes who work with sex workers, and Laura Lee, a sex worker who's been in the business since the 90s. Thank you both for joining us. I want to start with you first of all, Niki. What's your response to this biggest ever survey of sex workers online specifically?
Well, it confirms a lot of the issues that we see in our day-to-day work, that the first concern for all sex workers is safety. We have to go through, you know, we do a lot of work to keep ourselves safe, but we're not helped by either the laws, which prevent us working together in premises and also force us to work in isolation on the street, but also the problem with the police not responding to reports of violence appropriately, so that when people do come forward to report violence, more often than not, they may face prosecution themselves for prostitution offences while they see their attackers go free. And we've seen that on a day-to-day basis, and we still hear from the police things like, we're not going to take the report because we don't act on crimes when you've brought it upon yourself, as if sex workers ourselves are responsible for the violence that's inflicted on us. So the report did deal with a lot of those kind of issues, and it also tackles the increase in prostitution, which we've actually seen both online and on the street. I think there has been an increase in the street as well, and I think it's helpful in pointing us to what needs to be done, because there are the people that are working online that are coming to us are saying that things like the housing crisis, the rising rents and the low wages in other sectors are a key reason why people are going into sex work.
That's interesting that there's been a rise in online sex work. I was going to ask you if the changing nature of it to being online makes it safer.
It does. It can make it safer in some respects. The first and most important thing is that we can screen clients more easily, and that's a big improvement. And but it has, as the research said, led to other risks such as stalking and online harassment and breaches of privacy, so that people are getting exposed to their family and friends. But I think that the most important thing from this research for us is the issues of safety, the issues of policing, the impact of the laws. It actually points to the dangers of criminalising clients, because we definitely take issue with what Gavin Shooker said about the majority of sex workers being in a trafficked or exploited situation. The majority of sex workers are mothers working to support themselves and their families,
okay,
and that has to be the kind of priority.
Thanks, Niki. Let's bring in Laura. Laura, you've worked in the industry for 24 years. How have things changed in that time?
Well, I think the biggest change has been the move onto the internet, which, as Niki has said, has been very advantageous for us in terms of screening our clients. But in terms of screening our clients, one of the biggest changes for me has been the law change both in the north and the south of Ireland, which criminalised our clients and made our working lives far more difficult. Because what we find now is that clients are avoiding the screening processes completely. And while some of our more regular, trustworthy clients have dropped off, what we're left with now are clients who have a devil-may-care attitude and don't care if the police catch up with them or not. So the internet can only protect us so far. Really, the law needs to step up to the mark, and so do the policing standards.
And have you ever, in your time, had a situation where you decided not to go to the police over something?
I have. I was a victim of violence in Glasgow from a very unstable man, and our relationship as sex workers with Police Scotland is very fraught, to say the least. So I didn't feel any benefit in going forward and reporting him at that point.
Why?
Because I didn't feel I would be taken seriously. I didn't know how much resources they were trying to apprehend him. I did, however, report him to National Ugly Mugs so that other sex workers would be aware of who he was.
And what are you calling for? Is it full decriminalisation of sex work, and you want brothel laws?
Yes, so what we're calling for is full decriminalisation, which means the removal of all punitive sanctions against sex work. So that allows work together in safety. It also allows us to work on street in safety as well, sometimes in a managed zone without, so that we won't be charged with something, etc.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking to us, Laura and Niki.